The icy rain lashed against his thin jacket as Ethan staggered down the empty street. His stomach growled, twisting in agony. He had not eaten since yesterday morning. His fingers, numb from the cold, clenched inside his frayed sleeves as he pulled them over his hands. Life had beaten him down, left him with nothing but regret and hunger. He was nobody, forgotten. Then he heard it, a scream, sharp, desperate. His head snapped toward the sound. A woman in a sleek dress struggled against a masked man. Her purse dangled from one arm, her heels skidding against the wet pavement. The man shoved her hard, forcing her toward a waiting car. Ethan did not think. He moved. Ethan lunged, slamming into the attacker with every ounce of strength left in his starving body. The man grunted as they tumbled to the ground, but Ethan was already swinging. His fist connected with the man's ribs, then his jaw. He had fought for scraps before. He knew how to throw a punch. The man snarled and shoved Ethan off, scrambling to his feet. In the dim streetlight, his face was hidden beneath a ski mask, but his movements were sharp, calculated. He was a professional. Ethan's pulse thundered as he stepped between the man and the woman. "Run!" he barked at her. But she did not move. She was frozen, eyes wide with fear. The attacker growled and yanked a knife from his pocket. Ethan barely had time to react before the blade slashed toward him. He twisted, but the knife tore through his sleeve, slicing his arm. A sharp sting spread through his skin, warm blood mixing with the rain. Ethan gritted his teeth. Pain meant nothing. Survival meant everything. The man lunged again, but Ethan dodged, his instinct sharper than his body's exhaustion. With a desperate burst of strength, he kicked the man's knee and slammed his elbow into his throat. The attacker gagged, stumbling backward. Then, sirens. Flashing red and blue lights painted the wet pavement. The attacker cursed, bolting into the shadows before the police arrived. Ethan exhaled sharply, his body trembling. He turned. The woman was staring at him. Up close, she was stunning. Long, dark hair, deep brown eyes that still flickered with fear, full lips parted in shock. But there was something else in her expression. Recognition. "You saved me," she whispered. A sleek black car screeched to a stop beside them. Two men in dark suits rushed out. "Miss Carter," one of them called. "Are you hurt?" Ethan frowned. "Carter? As in, the Carter family? The billionaires?" "I am fine," she said, still looking at Ethan. "Because of him." One of the men eyed Ethan suspiciously, his gaze lingering on his soaked hoodie and torn boots. Ethan clenched his fists, bracing for the usual disgust. Instead, the woman stepped forward. "What is your name?" she asked. He hesitated. "Ethan." Her lips curved slightly. "Ethan, you have no idea what you just did." The first man cleared his throat. "Miss Carter, we need to leave. Your father." She ignored him and reached into her purse, pulling out a business card. She pressed it into Ethan's cold fingers, her touch lingering for a moment. "Come to this address tomorrow," she said. "Please." Ethan stared at the card. Olivia Carter. By the time he looked up, she was already gone. He should have thrown the card away, but he did not. Ethan stood in front of a towering skyscraper, gripping the business card like a lifeline. He had barely slept. The rain had soaked his clothes, and though they had dried, they still clung to him like a reminder of where he belonged. Not here. Security guards eyed him as he stepped inside the gleaming lobby. Everything was glass, gold, and wealth, too polished, too perfect. He was nothing but an outsider. Then a voice called out, "Ethan." He turned. Olivia Carter stood at the entrance of an elevator, dressed in a navy suit, poised yet warm. "You came," she said. He swallowed. "Was not sure if I should." "I was." She gestured for him to follow. As they rode up, he tried not to fidget. When the doors opened, they entered a private office, the city skyline stretching beyond massive windows. "I wanted to thank you properly," Olivia said, sitting across from him. "You did not just help me. You saved my life." Ethan shrugged. "I did what anyone would do." She tilted her head. Most people would have walked away. Silence stretched between them. Then she took a deep breath. I want to help you, Ethan. His stomach clenched. He knew where this was going. Pity, a handout. He shot to his feet. I am not a charity case. Olivia frowned. That is not what I know how this works. His voice was tight. Rich people throw money at a problem and move on. Her eyes darkened. You think this is about money? Ethan hesitated. I need someone I can trust, she said. Someone who does not play games. You proved that last night. He frowned. What are you saying? She stepped closer. I want to offer you a job. Ethan's breath caught. A job, not charity. For the first time in years, hope flickered inside him. Ethan's heart pounded as he processed Olivia's words. A job? It had to be a joke. People like her did not offer jobs to people like him. He had been ignored, discarded, treated like a problem society wanted to erase. But Olivia Carter, billionaire, heiress, someone who could have anything, was offering him something he had not dared to dream of. A chance. His throat felt dry. What kind of job? Olivia leaned against her desk, watching him carefully. Personal driver, security, assistant, whatever fits. Ethan scoffed. I am not qualified for any of that. You knew how to protect me last night, she countered. You knew how to fight, how to stay calm. That is more than half the people I hire. He shook his head, stepping back. This is crazy. You do not even know me. She took a step forward. I know enough. You had nothing to gain, yet you risked yourself for a stranger. Ethan clenched his fists. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe this was real, but the world had never been kind to him. Nothing came without a cost. His voice was rough. And if I say no? Olivia's expression did not change. Then you walk out that door, and I will not stop you. She hesitated, then added softly, but I hope you do not. Ethan swallowed hard. He had spent years expecting disappointment, bracing for rejection. But she was not looking at him with pity. She was looking at him like she believed in him. That was more terrifying than anything else. His hands twitched at his sides. He could leave, go back to sleeping under bridges, scrounging for scraps. It was familiar. It was safe in its own cruel way. Or, he took a deep breath. When do I start? A slow smile spread across Olivia's lips. Right now. An hour later, Ethan stood in the underground parking garage, staring at a sleek black car. The keys were cold in his palm, heavier than they should have been. Let's see how you drive, Olivia said, sliding into the passenger seat. Ethan hesitated. You are trusting me with this? She met his gaze. I am trusting you with a lot more than a car. His throat tightened. No one had ever said those words to him before. He slid into the driver's seat. The leather was smooth, unfamiliar beneath his fingers. The engine purred to life, a stark contrast to the old, broken-down cars he had stolen as a desperate teenager. His grip on the wheel tightened. Relax, Olivia murmured. Just drive. And so he did. For the first time in years, he was not running. He was moving forward. Ethan gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white as the city lights blurred past. He was driving Olivia Carter, a billionaire, in a car that probably cost more than everything he had ever touched in his entire life. The thought made his chest tighten. This could not be real. Every instinct screamed that he did not belong here. Any second now, Olivia would realize she had made a mistake. She would see him for what he truly was, a man who had spent more nights sleeping on concrete than in a bed, a man who had fought for survival in back alleys, a man who had nothing. And yet, here he was. Olivia sat beside him, her posture relaxed, her gaze focused on him rather than the road. You are quiet, she observed. Ethan exhaled sharply. I am trying not to crash your car. She chuckled. You are doing fine. He stole a glance at her. She was so at ease, as if bringing a homeless man into her world was the most natural thing in the world. It made no sense. You never told me why you are doing this, he said, his voice low. Olivia leaned back. Because I know what it is like to feel trapped, to feel like no matter what you do, the world has already decided who you are. Ethan's jaw tightened. And what has the world decided about me? She tilted her head. That you are nobody. The words hit like a punch. But before he could react, she added, and I think they are wrong. He swallowed hard. He did not know how to respond to that. Minutes later, they pulled into a massive estate. The mansion loomed over them, its towering windows glowing softly against the night sky. The gates shut behind them with a quiet hum, sealing him inside a world that was not his. He killed the engine and stared ahead. I do not belong here. Olivia unbuckled her seatbelt, turning to him. Maybe you do not belong where you were, but that does not mean you cannot belong somewhere else. Ethan let out a shaky breath. His whole life, he had been searching for something, purpose, stability, a reason to believe he was more than just another forgotten soul. And now, someone was offering it to him. I do not know how to be part of this world, he admitted. Olivia smiled, a warm, knowing look in her eyes. Then let me show you. Ethan sat there for a long moment. Then slowly, he opened the door and stepped out. For the first time in years, he was not running. He was home.